Today's whiskey is going to be a little different, so I thought I'd work out its history with a little pre-party pour of something else. Scotch whiskey production doesn't occur in a bubble. It is affected by world events, like a world war, for instance. Between 1941 and 1947, Scotch whiskey production was either shut down entirely or severely limited due to grain rationing, which itself was due to a lack of grain imports coming into Scotland. Whiskey production really didn't start ramping up again until 1948. Keep that in mind. There are a number of interesting things about this whiskey bottle, one of which is the embossed lettering in the back of the glass bottle. Federal law forbids sale or reuse of this bottle was mandated by the federal government between the years 1932 and 1964. There are stories on the internet about when whiskey actually went into these bottles after 1964. Some stories saying, 1970 or later. To me, that's hearsay until I see something more convincing. But I have no doubt that whiskey did go into these bottles after 1964 because Scotch whiskey sales were definitely not at their peak in the 1960s. So the next step would be to look at other parts of the bottle. The tax stamp, with its lack of liquid volume measurement, is from 1961 to 1977. So now we have a start date, 1961. Now, time for a little Scotch Whiskey 101. When you see an age statement on your bottle of whiskey, that age is the age of the youngest whiskey in the mix. Ambassador, 25 years old, has to be at least 25 years old to be called Ambassador 25 years old. There could be older whiskey in the bottle. So now it's time to use a little bit of math and that whiskey history I talked about at the start. If one is to look at 1941 to 1947 as mostly a blank for whiskey production, you got the years 1940 as an end and 1948 as a restart for whiskey production. That 1940 whiskey turned 25 years old in 1965. That 1948 whiskey turned 25 years old in 1973. If this was bottled, say, in the mid-60s, then the whiskey is closer to 25 years old, and the bottle is dustier. If it was bottled, say, in the early 70s, like 1971 or 1972, then the whiskey in the bottle has to be older. In fact, it would be 31 or 32 years old. So the bottle would be less dusty, but the whiskey inside would be older. So I'm gonna go with something semi-safe, thinking it's from the mid-60s, maybe 65, 66, or 67. It's not a cork, it's a twist off. By the way, the fill level's lovely. It's right up to here. I'm gonna let that breathe for a moment and introduce to you today's guest pour. Ambassador 8-year-old. Bottled somewhere between 1969 and 1972. There are ads for sale on eBay and other places of this very label bottle from that time period. No matter when this was bottled, I've been looking forward to this. The whiskey in here may have run through Scappa's or Glen Scotia stills more than 80 years ago. Immediately, I'm getting dates and dried apricots. The nose kind of fits the season. You've got this fruitcake, figgy, nutmeg and clove thing going on. Maybe some digestive biscuits. There's orange peel. It also has a little bit of a meatiness to it, almost beef stock-like. Let's give it a sniff of the 8-year-old. At that time, Ambassador 8 had the Scotch at its lightest slogan. This fits that. It's light, it's fruity, it's floral. It kind of feels like well-aged grain whiskey as opposed to malt whiskey. It's time to drink this. It's been open for a while. Cheers. It's really good. Fireplace, honey, orange candy, Asian citrus like yuzu or kabosu. It's like wood smoke in the distance. There's also a charcoal note, but rather than being right there in the palate, it creeps in later in the finish. There's a little bit of savoriness and herbalness and saltiness right in the middle of the palate. Definitely dates. I am a sucker for date notes in whiskey, and this has got it. This palate is loaded with old bottle effect. Metal, paper, glass. Once one digs through that old bottle effect, there's plenty of sweetness. There's white fruits like pears and apples. Unlike the 25, this has no hint of smoke. It has very little finish to it. It's time for that part of the episode wherein I theorize about what I'm actually drinking. Well, I'll spend a few seconds here on the 8-year-old. The heart of the issue probably is the small bottle. This had an excellent fill level, but it may be the nature of being trapped in a small bottle for so long. But this one definitely has a very nice nose and a very challenging palate. Not because the whiskey itself was challenging, but because time has not been gentle with the whiskey. Here, the sherry casks do not take over. So there's probably a mix of cask types in here. It also has a texture and a mouthfeel and a finish. So while there's grain whiskey in here, there's probably less than I originally expected. If you buy a bottle of Dusty Ambassador 25, I cannot promise that your bottle will also be mostly old bottle effect free. But if it has a good fill level and the label is not sun bleached, then at least the odds are better for you. I'm very surprised, but also very thankful that this whiskey is as good as it is. Papa! Sounds like my time is up. But thank you for watching, and I hope you have a happy and healthy New Year.